main question, which hasn't been answered, and which is a good question for you to ask yourself if you are interested in the Shakespeare man, is how did he get this learning in these plays? How did he learn Italian, French, Spanish, Latin, Greek? Even if he went to the school in Stratford, which is not definitely proved, I have not heard a good argument that you learnt those kind of things in that school, which you left at 13 or 14, having basically learnt Latin grammar. Even if he had a genius teacher there, even that doesn't really hold water. It would have been very difficult for him to buy these books, to get access to these books. He would have been working very, very hard as a poor actor, as an apprentice actor. And even if the different theories about what he might have been doing in the lost years when no one knows where he was, perhaps teaching school somewhere, these theories, I've explored them, and they still don't provide an answer to where this incredible learning in the plays is found. It's not just a learning on the surface of the plays either. It's actually the source material that he's using for his plays. Now, if you don't know these languages very well, there were many good stories in the English language, and many stories that were translated from other cultures. But his first plays and on through his whole career go back to these sources that are only available in these foreign languages. So it's a very interesting question, and there are many other fundamental questions. Olivier once said, that anyone who questions the authorship of Shakespeare is questioning genius. And that's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. In fact, I'm probably proposing a greater genius than someone who thinks of the Shakespeare man as writing the plays. It's not a question of genius. You can be born with a genius ability, like Mozart or Beethoven, born with a genius in their genes to play the piano, but that doesn't give you experience, and it doesn't give you book learning. And those two things are necessary for these plays. The genius is then how he married those things together. And that's not in doubt. I'm not doubting the genius of it, but you have to answer the question of where he got these experiences. As the Oxfordians have really done the great work on experiences, because they went through the plays and said these are the kinds of things in the life of that time that he had intimate experience with. And that's the other question that they're very good on, which how could he have got the experience of these kind of behaviors? It's a really wonderful mystery. And so I think, for me, it's not about denying or squashing anyone's thoughts or beliefs. It's about the love of mystery, which Einstein says is the greatest beauty a human being can experience is contact with mystery. And this authorship of the Shakespeare plays, that's one of the great enigmas and mysteries. Because why did he write these things and not take credit for them? It's a real mystery.
Now, Professor Stanley Wells says everyone who doesn't believe in the true orthodox theory is a crackpot, and the theories are all crackpot theories. What's your response to that?
I mean, it's just a pathetic statement. I'm afraid it's a pathetic statement. They're not crackpots. I know these people. I'm not a crackpot. I don't, I'm not someone who hasn't got a connection with life or scholarship. It's a very defensive statement. I find it very curious that someone who ran the Shakespeare Institute is so defensive about questions. That's what we're doing. We're raising questions, and we're raising questions on fundamental facts. I think there are some people who are crackpot about authorship theories. I think there are many people who are crackpot about Shakespeare, the Stratford man. I think there's far more crackpot stuff been written about the Stratford man than about Oxford or Bacon or Marlowe. I think inevitably in all activities of human beings there are very radical and sometimes very crackpot enthusiastic people around it. I mean, that's a given. But to say that all the theories, all the people are, is insulting and defensive, and you just think, well, what's the point of that person just has a closed mind. And why they have a closed mind is a curiosity to me. maybe people have published so much that they're nervous about it, or I would really, I think you started this interview saying, what's the way forward? The way forward is to look, to answer the questions, to come forward with the answers to the questions. The Oxfordians have to answer the question of how did the plays get written? How do you explain Oxford dying so early, and when the plays are still appearing after his death? The Oxfordians are developing an argument that they were written earlier, and they were performed in private, I think, and then later came to the public stages. Most scholars, Stanley will agree, that the plays seem to be reported to be only 2 hours long when they play in the amphitheatres here. 2 hours traffic of our stage in the prologue to Romeo and Juliet. Well, that means they were cut, if that's the truth. You can't play Hamlet at 2 hours, even if you speak as fast as a rap artist. Now, it doesn't really hold water, that argument. So it is possible that they were written for an audience who knew what the classical references were and knew all the subtle issues of policy and things like that. And when you came in front of a public illiterate audience here, you took those things out, just as we do now. So there is it's an interesting argument for the Oxfordians to make. I don't know the ins and outs of their arguments well enough. Maybe an argument that's raised about Bacon is why is the writing different in his works to Shakespeare? Well, there are 1,100 parallelisms between his writing and the plays. Sometimes very, very similar phrases you find in the poems of the plays and in his writing. Now, is that because he heard it first here and then wrote it down? Or did Shakespeare read Bacon and then write it down? Or were they both just repeating commonplaces? There are different levels of the argument, but it's not a crackpot argument. You have certain facts which raise a question, and then you talk about that question. If when you're having a debate about this is only, it's not like life and death. It's not like the cure for AIDS or cancer or something. We're talking about literary historical fact. What is the point of saying all these people are crackpot? It just debases Stanley's other brilliant work. It's just a very strange comment for a wise man like Stanley Wells to make. And I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Though I am convinced that Shakespeare, the man from Stratford, was intimately involved with the plays and with the running of this theatre behind me, I'm not convinced that he wrote the plays. I'm not convinced because of a couple of major questions. I do not see how he got the learning that is in the plays. And if someone could answer that question for me, that would help me to believe that he was able to write the plays. But I cannot see how he was able to. And from the little we know of his life, which seems to be motivated by money, I do not see that as a motivation, a prime motivation behind these plays. I find the case for Bacon the most convincing. I find the Oxford case very interesting, and I don't know enough about the Marlowe case to comment on the Marlowe case. But I also want to say that in my experience, everyone I've met to do with the authorship inquiry on all sides are all coming from a love of Shakespeare and Shakespeare's work. None of them come from a place of wanting to debunk or do any harm to his work. Their love is intense, and anyone who loves Shakespeare is a friend of mine. If their theories seem strange to me, then I think the right thing is to ask the right questions of the theories and say, this is why I don't understand your theory. But to attack any of these people is to me beyond comprehension, beyond comprehension. And if you believe that Shakespeare wrote the plays, you're a friend of mine. It does not matter to me. It does not matter to me. It's just a mystery to me and something that I can't quite believe. It doesn't quite make sense to me. But I love talking about it with anyone, and that's how I feel about it.